Hello, everyone. I think some of you may have been here for my psychology talk or saw it on YouTube, so thank you for that. But yeah, today's talk focuses a little more on the concept of like relatedness, emergence, autonomy, and Pokemon Go, of course, which is a minorly popular game. It's come out in the last few weeks, you know. You may have played it, may have. How many of you do actually? Show of hands? Have? How many have played Pokemon Go? Decent number, okay. How many of you are not playing it just because your phones can't handle it? Okay. There we go. Thank you. So, yeah, popular game. So, as a bit of a recap from last time, what game design is applied psychology. What researchers are finding out that the concepts that behind psychology of the human experience, it crosses mediums. And we have had attempts to use the power of play going back centuries. Like, we talk about gamification, if it's some new thing, using all these concepts of fun to get people to do behavior change, to learn about this or that, or go exercise more. This is not new. This has been used from centuries ago. In fact, the 18th century was called the century of play because people were using all sorts of ludification, gamification techniques to do things from composition to teaching about religion to learning about mathematics and sciences. So that's all old hat pretty much. But the problem is knowing the concepts are there doesn't mean we apply them very well. Just look at serious games and gamification and how a lot of those are not doing so well these days. Serious games, problems, a lot of them don't understand user experience or psychology. A lot of them aren't really games from the point of view of the users. And a lot of them have no community involvement or more opportunities for emergence, which I think is one of the biggest problems. That too many of them are meant as standalone experiences, and when you're trying to encourage behavior change and trying to encourage people to do things, you want something that ties into a community to normalize it so that people can feel that this is acceptable. Otherwise, you're going to get behavior change that only lasts about as long as your New Year's resolution when you decide to go to the gym and work out more, which doesn't exactly last beyond maybe a month or so. Yes. You may have heard the concept of emergence or emergent behavior. In this case, picture of flocking behavior where larger entities, patterns, such emerge among interactions from smaller entities that themselves do not enable such properties. Human communities and human behaviors are really interesting when you want to study that sort of thing. Humans kind of have a flocking behavior of their own. If you take a look at South Bank on a Friday night with Pokemon Go, all sorts of people just showing up there. Kind of cool. But yeah, a couple of the concepts I talked about last time were intrinsic motivation, so autonomy, competence, relatedness, why people make the choices they make. In serious games and gamification, one of the things that is impaired a lot is autonomy because you don't feel like you're choosing to do things. You don't feel like you actually have much power over the game. You don't feel that you're choosing to perform a certain behavior. It's like you're being railroaded. You have one way through. It's like, what is my meaningful choice here? You don't have one. It's like, no, you have to press X to continue, X to proceed. And let's be fair, a game that's entirely QuickTime events is not great, especially when they're not really QuickTime events and they're not graphically appealing most of the time either. So, intrinsically motivation behavior, its own reward, long-lasting, this is what we want to accomplish. A lot of time, however, we need to use extrinsic motivation as the lever to engage people with this stuff. So the performance of activity, in order to attain an outcome, like for a rat, maybe food, for people it's usually money, points, some kind of reward drop, like Pokemon maybe. So two types of human behavior, respondent and response to stimulus, operant, which you think is autonomous and spontaneous, but usually is in response to some other stimulus like, I am bored, I'm going to go do X. X may be something you found interesting before, or X may be something that you generally thought might be fun. But over time, extrinsic motivations can become internalized if you have autonomy support, if you think that you're choosing to do something, and it's not just because I am going to this job because it pays me well, but I hate it and I don't want to. And your relatedness support is there. Like, for example, if you want to go to work because you have a great community there, you love your colleagues, you get a lot of freedom of choice, you feel like your stuff matters, you want to go to work. You have intrinsic motivation about your job, as opposed to if neither of those are there, you're going there just because you have to, then you don't want to. Same for a lot of these games, actually. So In a lot of games, they're unfortunately not there for the serious game stuff, but Pokemon Go, that it is a lot of the time. And I'll get into that in a little bit. PEN's player experience of need satisfaction, one of the old frameworks that ties in with self-determination theory about how autonomy, competence, and relatedness all go together, which shows that need satisfaction is more predictive of long-term retention satisfaction than just how much you enjoy the game. It talks about engagement, enjoyment, and such. Okay, so we're getting to some of the other things, some of the meat of the matter, like competence. You want to be a master. 2 things, power 2, power over. Power over is dominance and control, like when you're capturing a gym, for instance. Power 2, you feel empowered to accomplish and achieve. The point system, the levels you have in Pokemon Go, how you continue to advance, how you evolve things, all this stuff is built in that game. The sense of challenge. Autonomy, I'm sure you all know about meaningful choices at this point, given that most of you have created games and have played a lot of games. And outside of games, autonomy is pretty much being a causal agent, being able to make the choices in your own life, which a lot of interventions don't allow you to do very well, which is why a lot of people don't like them. Even if a lot of time the choices you have are illusionary. You think you want to do A or B, but they all route back to C. The point is not to let people know that they don't have a choice. Because if they do know that everything is meaningless in the end, then they're going to be like, why should I even do this? And so we get to, and that causes reactance, which is the motivational reaction to a perceived threat to autonomy. When you feel that someone is taking your autonomy away, you react badly. You tend to be like, no, I don't want to do this. Like, or what are you telling me to do? Exercise more. Why? It's kind of why teenagers will rebel against their parents and be like, no, like, what are you telling me to do? Even if they know it's actually a good idea. So you get things like relatedness, which is explicit, like in-game structures, chats, guilds, raids, and MMOs, when you're connecting with people and through systems that the game permits, or emergent, which I find more interesting. The systems and structures that emerge spontaneously to fill unmet needs or niches in the games, based on the player ecosystem or community, and is one of the things that can make a lot of games meaningful, but isn't there a lot of the time. One of the things about the process of emergence is it's organic. You have a lot of people coming together, they respect one another, they all contribute. They tend to have a common language or framework because they're familiar with the game, or at least the underlying concepts in it, and they want to work together. So again, A arises to fill an unmet need, a response to lack of information, like where is this Pokemon, and to share experiences, expertise with one another, like you will see, say, Southbank. So let's turn to Pokemon Go, finally, after all these slides on psychology, right? You've all seen how it's become popular. You've all seen how it's become a media explosion, how people have been talking about it left and right, all the good things about it, how people have died while playing it because they were too engaged on their phones while crossing the street, which is not so good, or falling off a cliff. But why is it so engaging to people? Why has it become the most popular mobile game in the world? Why has it become the first big success of augmented reality when its augmented reality techniques are really kind of shallow and not very deeply implemented? And that's because, in comparison to a lot of other things, like a lot of the alternate reality games, augmented reality games, this stuff, one, tapped into existing IP, and two, really leveraged that sense of community and accessibility. A lot of things like ARGs, alternate reality games, tapped into a sense of exclusivity. You had to really dig and find out what was going on before you could even begin playing the game, or you even know the game existed in a lot of cases, like I Love Bees. With Pokemon Go, it's like, oh no, the advertising is there. It ties into a very popular IP. So people are like, oh hey, Pokemon, I know that. My childhood, I remember playing these games growing up. And so, amusingly enough, it's also doubled as a stealth exergame because lots of people have been walking a lot more trying to find Pokemon, which they would never do from another app. Because like, I don't want an app that makes me walk, but what is Pokemon Go making people do? Go. So yeah, Emergent Effects. You see here a picture of lots of Pokestops, all with lure modules. Very similar to what you might see, again, at South Bank or over in Queen Street in the city. This promotes a lot of people getting out of their houses, walking around more, talking with other people, going to businesses, actually. Your presentation talked about how you can't drink a couple of beers while playing Pokemon Go. Maybe not on the street, that's true. But on the other hand, there are a lot of bars that actually are Pokestops. So companies, well, proprietors may just like buy a lure module, slap it in there. Hey, you got a lot more business. You can sit down with your mates, play Pokemon Go, have a pint. That's promoting a lot more of these offline meetings, offline spontaneous gestures between people to like get to know one another than almost any other game has. When the mobile phone came out, one of the biggest complaints was that now it's making people just look at their tiny screens all day. Their office and their hands will never be off them. Now it's getting people to talk. Like a lot of the time, you just will play Pokemon Go, you'll put the phone down the table, waiting for Pokemon at the Pokestop, and you'll be talking to your friends. They're like, oh, hey, catch something, go back talking with your friends. It's actually a great way to meet people. Amusingly enough, there's actually a dating website that's catered to people who are meeting up to play Pokemon Go. That's how they're setting you up on dates now. It's like, what kind of date do I want? What kind of Pokemon Go player am I? Hey, okay, we'll pair you up. You go out into the real world. There's your date idea settled. Kind of interesting. And then we move on to communities and context, because it's all in that. You see, none of these things would have happened if the community, both the virtual community of the game and the community in real life, did not normalize this sort of behavior. If you don't see anyone else walking around going and catching Pokemon, if you don't see anyone else going around talking with one another, sitting around catching stuff, it doesn't seem like it's normal behavior. You feel like you're out of place. You may not want to continue to be. You may feel a little stigmatized, a little out of it. And most people don't like behaviors that make them uncomfortable. Versus the huge community around Pokemon Go where everyone is doing it makes it more acceptable to, oh, I'm going to go out, I'm going to explore, I'm going to go and catch Pokemon because, hey, that's what everyone else is doing. It's a great way to add value to the visual experience because you get to meet people. It provides a sense of coherence and meaning. And for that, I have the picture of Team Harmony there because no matter what team you're in, you're all working together to have fun, we hope, and not actually getting into fights over gyms in real world. And also because the three teams actually map very well to the three aspects of the sense of coherence. Three parts of the sense of coherence, or what decides whether or not people succumb to stress and become unhealthy, are comprehensibility, the ability to understand what's going on, which is kind of like Mystic. You have manageability, the power to handle things coming your way, like Valor, and meaningfulness, like what you believe you're meant to do. Instinct. It all kind of blends together in that wonderful triangle and creates like the harmony. So yeah, sorry, I had to work in that Pokemon reference somehow. But yeah, today we have the huge Pokemon Go phenomenon. The exergame that's not billed as a serious game, which draws upon the intrinsic interest of the people who really were interested in catching these virtual creatures, reliving their childhood, becoming trainers, moving from just, I'm going to play on my DS or my Game Boy, to I'm on my phone, I'm meeting people, we're all in this together as a community, creating that sense of engagement. Because the emergent effects, when people were choosing to walk and search for Pokemon without necessarily the distance tracker, aside from the eggs or the metal you have in there, which you don't normally look at most of the time, it becomes something where the exercise is not the quest. The quest is you're going out to catch Pokemon, to hatch these eggs, to go out with your friends. And you don't notice that you're walking more because that's not the primary activity until maybe at the end of the day you get back and like, why are my legs so sore? And at the end, people see each other playing the game, they identify with them, they feel safe engaging them in conversation. One of the things I've heard a lot over the last few weeks is that a lot of people in the game community, especially a lot of female gamers, feel safer than they ever have before because they don't feel as ostracized, they don't feel as alienated. They feel like there's this huge welcoming community built around this game because everyone is essentially it's safe to show your fandom, to show that you're an inner geek. And beyond these effects, the sense of acceptance, the sense of welcome, has a lot of possible health benefits for mental health, emotional health, and well-being. Higher motivation levels for depressed individuals who go out. Because if you're depressed, one of the hardest things to do in the world is just wake up in the morning and find motivations to leave your house. You're getting people doing that. You're getting people with PTSD who are actually talking to people for the first time in like 5 years and go to the park. You're getting people with anxiety who are saying, oh, this is calming me down. It's really interesting. There's a lot more research that needs to be done on it, and I'm one of the teams that's doing some research on it now, which is really kind of cool for the State Department to be paying me for. And yeah, it's a big phenomenon. I'm very curious to see where it goes in the next few months to years, and what's going to be happening with it, given all the good press, the bad press, and everything else. Because what I'd like to say is that no matter what the world is that we're working in, with the virtual world, the augmented world, the physical world, people are people. That everything changes, avatars, places, and styles, but the heart, who you are, remains. Thanks. Any questions? Yes?
You talked about how the game normalizes the behavior, or the behavior of playing Pokemon Go, being on your phone, walking around. That behavior has become normalized.
Yes, a little more.
Do you think that the Pokemon IP contributed to that a lot? Like people accepted the game more because of the Pokemon?
Yes, I think working with the IP definitely helped out a lot, and the fact that it was coherent, that it was consistent with what they tell you to do in Pokemon. You don't catch Pokemon in that game by staying in one place. In the Pokemon theme song, hey, they tell you to travel across the land searching far and wide. Like, how else do you expect to be on Pokemon Master, right? So people accept that. I think that's something that really needs to be taken into account when people are doing serious games, too, that you could integrate the sorts of messages into existing IPs, into existing games, because people would see them more, engage with them more, instead of just building things independently, which have very little reach most of the time, and which don't get much acceptance. Anyone else? Sure. Sarah.
Niantic had huge game prize with Pokemon Go, which, if you just did a feature comparison, was kind of a better game, in inverted quotes. Why didn't it succeed when Pokemon Go did?
Ingress, you mean? Or? Well, one, there was the community, or you had some sense of community, but Pokemon Go, because of the huge community that had been built up by Nintendo's franchise over the years, that was a huge driver to it, because everyone was like, hey, I can actually go into the real world and catch Pokemon. Whereas Ingress was like, oh, this is just another science fiction, essentially ARGY type thing, which is doesn't have that great of a audience anyway. The thing is, Niantic didn't actually anticipate Pokemon Go would be as successful as it would. They were anticipating something like 300,000 people based on the success of Ingress. First week, you get something like 25 million people. You wonder why the servers went a little wonky, right? Yeah. Yes, Daniel.
Do you think there is a place for non-licensed AR games? Do you think Pokemon Go has opened up the market?
I would hope so. I would definitely hope so. I'm optimistic that now that people have seen some of the potential for it as more of AR as more than just a gimmick, as it usually was shown in conventions or stuff where you can take a picture next to your favorite character or something, then now maybe more people will be using it, especially with how accessible it can be on your phone and how it doesn't just eliminate the rest of your environment like VR can. But that remains to be seen, really. So, anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.